Welcome to another episode of The Practical Metaphysical Journey, the place where practical meets the paranormal, the mundane meets the metaphysical, and the spiritual meets the spooky. A place where we share the experiences of our journeys here on Earth. We encourage you to listen and see what resonates, because we're all different yet the same. We invite you to take a break with us, so unpack and stay a while. We're glad you stopped by for a visit. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Practical Metaphysical Journey. Tonight's episode, we are going to be talking about the 3 words that we avoid saying or using as part of our metaphysical journey, a part of our process of learning to be better people and to know our purpose more. And, this could be not just necessarily 3 words that you avoid saying to yourself, but could it also be 3 words or word, out of them that you avoid using around other people as well. Reason I was thinking about this particular topic is, we know that words have impact. They can create. There is intent behind words. They can be extremely powerful. You think about, not only like some politicians or other people who do public speaking, and we say, oh, they have great charisma. Well, part of that is they know what words to use. They can emote, and they can evoke emotions out of a group and get them to start thinking the same way. So, as I was thinking about this topic, it's everything we say has an impact. You don't necessarily know right away what the impact may be, and it could have an unintentional impact. You may just say something. I tend to be sarcastic sometimes, and I do catch myself at times with certain people that I'm around. I have to be careful because that sarcastic remark, which to me I think is funny, may not be funny to them based on where they come from and what they're dealing with. So I'm sure there's more than 3 words that we all could kind of come up with a list of what do we try to not use around people, and I just used one of mine. But so I figured let's kind of choose 3. We'll take it down to that. And as I was saying, for me, it's as I'm on this metaphysical journey and I'm learning about more of myself and what the impact of my actions have, and just doing good and being a better person, and being aware of what I'm potentially doing to other people. The words is definitely one of them, one of those things that I've come to realize have that impact. They can create a lot. Story I have behind that one is I've studied herbalism, so I was at an event and we had a guest speaker. This guy was talking about some of the things, the plants that he works with and so forth, and around his waist he did have a fanny pack, which, okay, if people don't know what that is, it's like a little bag thing that's on a belt and you wear around your waist. And on the table, he had some glass beakers of stuff that he was talking about. Well, he accidentally, at one point, with the fanny pack, knocked one of the beakers off, and it fell to the ground and shattered, of course. And he was unaware of that part of it, but then he stopped real quick and said, oh, did I do that? And I'm sure, everybody in the audience were all thinking, yeah, you did it. Mm-hmm. One woman blurted it out. She goes, oh, yeah, you knocked it off. Not in a bad sense, just confirming, yeah, you're the one that did it. And he got so upset because he had apologized. He had to actually take a break for a little while and come back. He says, I'm really sorry. He says, because as a kid, I was punished so many times for doing stuff like that accidentally. And so when that woman, just not intending to make him feel bad, just said, yeah, you did it, brought back all those memories from his childhood, and he had to take a moment to kind of get himself back into a good space. So, like I said, you can use these words. They might sound perfectly innocent, but in that moment, that context, you're not sure. So I think, for me, I'm trying to be more aware of what I say around people and so forth. So that's where I was coming from when I was dreaming up this particular one. So, I mean, we can go through each, what are your 3 words, or do you want to do word by word, whatever?
What's the one you said you just said that you...
Try.
Okay, I thought it was try. I wanted to make sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, for me, that's a normal one. A lot of people say that, and a lot of life coaches and so forth tell you got to try to get rid of the word try.
There is no try.
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, and I get it. I understand the concept, because there are studies. If you look at books or that talk about raising children or something, they say that if a parent's constantly telling the child you're no good or you're a failure or whatever, they're going to grow up believing that. So that word try, if I'm always saying I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to be a good person, then I'm always in the process of trying to get there instead of being.
You're kind of testing it out.
Yeah, yeah. So sorry if that was somebody else's word, but that was one of mine. And I still use it all the time.
You actually brought up another word that's one of my words, and that word is sorry, or sorry, however people pronounce it. I'm upstate New York, so I'm sorry. And
you're sorry that you're from upstate New York?
There are times, yes indeed. And it's funny because I never used to think anything of this word until I was in a meeting at a company that I worked at one day. And there was a lot going on with our district manager and all that. And he was a great guy. And somebody said, well, I'm sorry that I didn't. And he just stopped everything and he said, I hate that word sorry. And he said, I always tell my children, if you're going to apologize for something, you apologize for something because you are not a sorry person. And I was like, wow, it hit me for some reason. I'm like, you are not a sorry example of a person or a sorry, pitiful person or a miserable excuse for a person. You are not sorry. And I think the impact behind the word, say, I apologize for this instead of I'm sorry, it means so much more. And I just thought it was a really interesting insight. I don't know where he got it from. And he unfortunately passed away way too young. But I didn't take anything else away from his meeting, but that for some reason woke me up in the meeting, and I was like, wow, you know what? Yeah, I'm not sorry. I'm apologizing for something that maybe I did or said or something like that. And I just really liked that because I think that meant more if I had to say that to somebody. It's like, I apologize for what I've done or what you took away from us or whatever, instead of just saying I'm sorry.
I think he's looking up the definitions.
There you go. No. Could be.
There's got to be a little twist on it.
Yeah, it was just a little bit of a thing. I mean, and I think too, like sometimes the word sorry, the meaning behind it has gone away because it's overused. So it's like, oh, I'm sorry, or I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry this. So the tone is going to depend upon it a lot too. But I find that if sorry is a throwaway word for me, it's like, oh, I'm sorry. But it's like, I apologize. Then that kind of means I own something. And, so for me to my sense, that means I'm actually taking more responsibility and putting that out there. Or even if it comes up at work and say a patient, because I'm always talking about work in the emergency department, a patient's had a bad experience with another team member or something like that, or a physician or something. I'm like, I apologize that you had to go through that. Words are so important in the way you use them. And if I say, well, I'm sorry you had to deal with that, or I'm sorry that happened, that's probably okay. They're not thinking about it for me. I'm like, they always want us to apologize and take the politically correct, say, I apologize for that behavior. I apologize that you shouldn't have been, it just is a little bit stronger of a word. But yeah, so I try to stay away from the word sorry. That's one of mine.
That's interesting. That brought up memories for me because my husband told me the same thing that guy did. Evidently, I was saying that a lot on whatever was happening. I don't know. I was trying to take responsibility, I guess. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think now, like back to that. Yeah, I wonder what I was doing. But I guess when we first were married, first few years of being married. And evidently I was saying that a lot. Like anything that would happen, I would apologize for it.
Yeah.
Even though it had nothing to do. He goes, "Why do you always say you're sorry?" He's like, "You weren't even there."
Right, right.
I was like, "I don't know." So I've tried over the years to stop using that as well. I've tried.
There you go.
I tried. So I mean, sometimes I do, but I understand what you're saying. I did switch to apologize.
Yeah.
And really think about it before I even say that. Sometimes it's like, is this my place to
Right.
be apologetic? Like,
Right.
what really is happening in this
Do
scenario?
I have to own this? Yeah.
Right,
That's
right.
the thing. It's like, am I just saying it to, kind of be empathetic with somebody or, identify with them on some level, or is it really something I've done? And I'm not a sorry person. I step up. I try to do everything. I try. I make the best attempt I can to, live up to a certain standard. And, but yeah, it was just interesting when he said that, and he was telling his kids, I tell them, never say you're sorry. You apologize for something, but you are not a sorry. And I who knows what trigger that was for him, being told he was a sorry excuse for a person. I've heard people say that, and you're a sorry excuse for a kid or whatever like that. It's like, wow, then that kid is going to identify with that word, perhaps, whatever. I don't know. That was one of my words there.
And if you don't think words have power, look at what just happened. I said something that triggered a thought in you, Deb, and then something you said triggered a thought in Lisa. So
Words.
just by us saying words caused thoughts in the others.
And
Absolutely.
emotions came up, and yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it
Yeah.
brings out a lot of things.
So sorry. That's how you say it. The first one is sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
I think
Yeah,
I'm the other one. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
And what I was looking up real quick, excuse me, is I just wanted to confirm something, and I apologize if I got it wrong to anybody who speaks German, but in German, like, the phrase for I'm sorry is es tut mir leid, and what that translates as, it's caused me sorrow that,
See, okay.
Got you.
which to me is kind of, I think that's probably the power that apologize has, in that you're not accepting the responsibility for that necessarily, if it's not yours.
Right.
Yes, there may be times you apologize for something you actually did, but it's like, no, that caused me a moment of sorrow or pain.
Yeah.
That you had to. So you're acknowledging and validating that what you're feeling. Okay, yes, I get it.
There's some empathy there.
Yeah.
There's some empathy around. I mean, that's what you want to convey, but it may be a triggering as well.
Right,
Yeah.
and like you said, so many people just automatically say, "I'm sorry." It's lost that meaning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So I struggled with this. I've sat with this. I said I would go last just to kind of hear what you guys kicked off with. I think part of my metaphysical journey was trying to change that mindset of let's try to be positive, let's go toward the possibilities, try to stop going down a negative track so much. So I just wrote down don't, can't, and never. I try. So now that's going to be
Right.
I work at not including these in my vocabulary. So if I think about something that to me that those are all negative, it's taking me down a very finite way, I would rather turn it to like, okay, I'm not sure about this, what else is possible about it, and kind of open up a pathway of ideas and possibilities instead of shutting it down with a don't, I can't, I never thinking.
Well, and like you just said, it shuts the door.
Yes.
If you say, I never do, where do you go from there?
Right.
Because you never do it, versus leaving it open a little bit. And I agree with you, the idea of what's possible. Okay, we're not going here, but what's possible, instead of saying, I never do that.
It's like when people
Or
say,
I'm never gonna do
never say never.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen.
Yep, yep,
Yep.
yep. Yeah. The other one that I have, my second one, is another obvious one that I hear a lot, but I'm consciously working on recognizing that I'm doing it, is want. And just I want to lose weight. I want this. I want that, to get away from always being in the state of not being satisfied with where I currently am.
Keeping in the state of
You know.
wanting and never having. Or
Right.
achieving.
Right. And it, now that I'm thinking about that, it relates to the episode that we recorded before this on being present. If I'm always wanting, I'm never present, because
You're
it's
living in a
there's
different
something that I haven't attained yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it causes, and the same with the word try. I think it kind of is in that same boat of, you're not being present, you're not satisfied, except where you are today. I'm perfect as I am today. There's things I can improve on, absolutely, but today, this is where I am. So I think and again, it's one of those things that everybody's heard, that try. A word to look at getting rid of from your vocabulary, if at all possible, or at least recognize where you're using it or how often you're using it.
It's funny because I struggled with this a little bit, and I was asking my husband, I go, what words do I never use? I'm like, or what words what are the words that I use a lot or don't ever use that you can think of? And, his first comment was that I use all the words all the time, but he did say, you all know me, it's okay. He never really hears me say the word always. And I thought about that, and yeah, always is one of those words that kind of, it means something has like, I don't know, I guess a definitive amount of time attached to it, always. So I'm always doing this, or I'm always doing that, and I'm not always doing stuff. It takes out that shred of possibility, kind of like never. But, so I'm like, oh, I'm always like this, or I'm always this way. No, I know things are always changeable. That's the only always about always is change. So that's one of those words, oh, you're always like this, or you're always doing this, and I'm always doing this. It just kind of keeps you from being able to deviate from doing something else or being something else. So I guess it's interesting if he noticed that I never say it. It must be something that on some level I do steer clear of and haven't really paid attention to. So I'm going to be keeping my own ears out for myself for when I say that. It's going to be one of those things. That's all I'm going to ever hear now.
And for me, I wonder why he noticed that.
Right? Because to use the word never, I never thought he was listening to me that much. So maybe he must be listening to me a lot more than I think he is. That was the first word that he came up with, and he came up with that immediately. So, I don't know.
Tells you he's always listening.
He's always listening. There we go. Jeez, the poor thing. I wonder if his brain still works.
Yeah. So the two words I talked about for me were try and want, find, and those are mainly for me in trying to help myself and get out of what we had talked about in the last episode of like the monkey mind and so forth. The other word, and this was the one that really triggered me to think about this topic or do an episode on this topic, is the word disappoint.
Oh, that carries a lot of weight.
It carries so much emotional weight. Because think about what it feels like, and I'm sure many people can, have this thought of, like, for a parent to look at their child and say, "I'm disappointed in you."
Yep.
How much that really can hurt people.
Yeah.
And so from my past, I had a manager, and I did learn quite a bit from him. Some of it was what not to do. But that was a word he used all the time to control people.
Conscious use of that word, because we
And
all
he
know.
did, yeah. And there were some people it was extremely effective, because if you did something wrong or weren't, weren't doing something the way he would have wanted, he would say, I'm disappointed you did it that way.
Verbal manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, there was one guy, it hit him so bad, and he was so emotionally upset.
Wow.
Luckily for me, I saw what he was doing,
Yeah.
so I didn't let it bother me. And there was another guy that also recognized that he and I had talked about it, because we both recognized he was using that word on purpose. And yeah, it used to kind of upset him that it didn't work on us. But it was because we see what you're doing.
Well, that's it. You saw the motive behind it.
Yeah, we saw
Yeah.
the motive behind
He
it.
wasn't truly disappointed. He was just throwing that word out there.
Yeah. And like I said, that when I was thinking of this topic, that was the word that caused me to think of this topic, because I saw firsthand how powerful that simple word was in controlling people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge trigger right there. Yeah. I can see that because, I remember as a kid, my mother saying, I'm not mad at you, I'm disappointed. And you're like, oh, it was over nothing, I'm sure, when you're a kid. But it did help set the tone for me. So, oh God, I don't want to disappoint anyone. Then what? You're going to go through life trying not to disappoint people? Somebody's always going to be disappointed. And that's actually them, not necessarily what you're doing. So, but it's a way of really slapping somebody down with some blame and some, you're not good enough type of stuff, had better expectations of you, you're not measuring up. I mean, all those things get wrapped into that
And
word.
how do you confront it? Because it's like, I'm disappointed in you versus, I'm angry you did that. Then you could say, well, I did it because of this. There's a possibility there where if you explain your intent, then that person goes, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't need to be angry. But for them to say, I'm disappointed, that's...
And what's funny,
how do you confront that?
Because that, to me, isn't quite so triggering. My first response is probably one of those sarcastic responses where I'm like, well, sit with the uncomfortable feeling. We all have to do it sometimes. I will throw that right back. But that's probably a defense that I came up with something else, because it is a hurtful word, and that is a little bit of hurt. So now I'm going to hurt you back with some words. Say, oh, well, sit with the uncomfortable feeling.
Yep.
I don't care that you are disappointed, so I hope that hurts you. It's kind of, and then I'd have no problem with that and walk away. But, but I feel the value of that word, and, knowing the motivation behind it, because like you saw that, I would tend to see that and be like, well, watch what I do to you now.
It goes to your ethics, almost like he's accusing you of something, and you're like, I did not do this on purpose.
Right.
This is, whatever you have to, all the scenarios you can think of that would happen. But
Sure.
in a work environment, you're like, I'm trying to do my best, and you're disappointed, instead of being constructive and saying, I wish you would have tried this, or this, or we need to include this, and just be more expressive in what you're really looking for, instead of saying you're disappointed. What do you do with that?
It's a dead end sentence. I'm disappointed in you.
Right.
It's not like, hey, let me show you how you could have done this better, or let me do this, or let me show you, or, hey, you must not have been aware of. It's not for a teachable moment. It is a shutdown right there.
Yeah, the manipulation, whatever that
Of
is.
a conversation, unless you want to do something silly like I'm thinking throwing it back at him, and that, which doesn't play well in the workplace anyways. But that is an immediate shutdown. That is a condemning phrase.
Yeah, and that was probably 25 years ago, and that experience has lived with me for that long,
Sure.
and it's still that fresh, and not that it upset me, because like I said, I saw the motive behind it, so I did not let that bother me, but just that remembrance of how powerful using that word in that manner was. 25 years later, I can tell that story, and in my mind, I'm reliving the story and watching him do that. It's that powerful. And just a little bit of a side note of a thought that the discussion triggered in me, because when we did our first episode, we talked about our beginning in this journey, this metaphysical journey and so forth, and I had mentioned, well, I probably started mine about 8 years ago, a little bit later in life, but now I'm thinking I was probably doing it all along. I just didn't call it metaphysics.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because if this happened 25 years ago, and learning that that's how powerful words can be, and in that setting, I was just learning to be a people manager.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of those lessons of, that's how something you should not do
Yeah.
when you work with people.
Definitely got an impression from that.
Yeah.
You're like,
And we all identified with it too. It was like, oh, if
Yes.
there was an audience in the room, they'd be going, oh, everybody would go back to a moment in time.
Yes. And I've talked to a couple of people about this topic because I wanted to test the waters a little bit of, is this something people would be interested in? And everybody had the exact same reaction when I said, because they would say, well, what are your words? And I would say, I avoid using the word disappoint. And everybody has that same reaction going, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it is. It's a very speaker-centric word. I mean, okay, well, you can be disappointed, but it's weird that it has that effect on the other person, because that is actually just so central to that person saying it. How do you get to be disappointed with something another person has done or something said or yeah, it's interesting. It really brings that back. It's just such a manipulative word. It's just crazy. I would have been like, well, set your bar lower next time, but so. But yeah, we've all heard it, and that it triggers that bit of sarcasm and anger in me to want to get back at him for using that word.
Yeah.
So yeah.
and again, there's no instruction there. So how do you know to do better
Right.
next time or different next time?
Yeah.
That's what it brings up for me, is like, okay, well, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
How do I change it or fix it for him?
Counterproductive, 100%. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a really good word there. Yeah. I mean, I try to stay away from other words that come after I am. I have to be very mindful of that, like I am broke, or I'm broke, or I'm lost. I don't like the word lost, because lost, to me, it's like, well, I'm lost. I'm just lost in this situation, or I'm lost, whatever. Lost gives me a sense of panic, because if you're lost, you don't know where to go, you don't know what's going on. For me, that word is just a hot mess, and I hear people say it, well, I'm lost at work, I don't understand. It's like, no, you're not lost, because there is a path, there is a way, let me help you. And I don't like that, and being lost. Like, I'm really good at navigating when I'm driving at night by stars and directions and all that, because I'm terrified of being lost somewhere. I must have seen one too many horror movies, Lost in a Cornfield or something. I do not get lost. Location-wise, I will never be lost. But it's one of those feeling lost. I just, that's a crappy word for me. I never liked that. It just,
When you say that, I think I would probably say I'm confused or I don't get this or something. That I'm using my don't word, but
Yeah.
I'm struggling.
loss is extreme. It's
Yeah.
because then you have to have someone help you, and it's like, whoa. Yeah, and it's not a word I've heard a lot. I never say that word. I really, truly don't, because I'm never lost. never. I always know where I am. But yeah, it's just one of those weird words, and I think it came to mind because we're working with somebody at our job now who she just doesn't get it, and she is literally lost in the sauce, man. She cannot find her way to doing this job right, and it's not really that she's lost; she's choosing not to. But her big thing is, well, I'm lost. I don't know how to do this. You're not lost. Everybody here has shown you the way. So stop using that word. You are not lost. And it drives me crazy. So I think that one has come more to my front of mind right now.
Sometimes it takes people a little longer for it to click.
She never,
You know?
never got click with her, but that's okay. But it's a choice.
I'm giving them the benefit.
With her, it literally is a choice.
Yeah.
And for her to use that, because she's using it as an excuse too. And I
You're like, hey, if this is your job, you better figure it out. If
That's it. It's all in how these words are used. She's not lost. She's had all of us holding her hand, showing her the way. But when she's saying that, it's an easy excuse for her to not have to try anymore. And so she's just giving up on it and or using it as an excuse. And
So this is probably a good episode to think about that, because I think we're going to kind of flip the script here in a second of what words can we use either instead of or more of, right? So when she says that, we could think of some things to come back with that instead of letting her own that. and instead of saying, well, you got to figure it out, like some other constructive things of,
Yeah, because my answer to that is generally, okay, so I know you're having difficulty in this situation. Is this a can't or a won't? Because a can't, I can deal with all day long. If there's some reason you can't understand something,
yeah, let's explain it
Okay.
different. Let's come
Let's
at it a
try-
different way. Or
I understand that there's an issue that you can't do something. If you won't, you're dead to me. Because you've made the choice, and there is nothing more I can do to expend my energy, time, effort, empathy, anything else with to help you. So now,
That's true.
by being lost and doing this as a won't, you get to see the door. It's one of those things. It's another way of kind of shutting down the communication. Saying, well, I'm just lost.
Yeah, there's no possibility there. You're floundering. You're just
Yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
So, yeah, in thinking about it, one of the thoughts that then came to mind for me is being aware of the words I'm using around other people, and not necessarily to, what it may trigger in the other person, but how do my word choices set up the stage for that communication with the other person? Thank you so much for listening to part 1 of the 3 words we avoid in conversation. We hope that you found some nuggets of information in there and maybe even triggered some thoughts for you of what words do you avoid in your conversations, or would like to maybe use some other positive words more frequently. In part 2, we're going to continue that part of the conversation of, okay, now we've talked about what we avoid using. Let's talk about what we do work at being more aware of using, or how do we use certain techniques to keep the conversations more open and more positive. So stay tuned for that part 2. Thank you.